The Michael Bay Transformers franchise is known for a variety of different reasons. On the more positive side of things, the soundtrack to these movies is absolutely terrific, giving us some amazing musical scores. The CGI has looked terrific ever since the first movie, with the 2007 film CGI being even better than some modern day CGI films released today. And overall, the big theatrical releases of these movies help the franchise to grow in popularity once again. On the more negative side of things, you have the racism, sexism, terrible humour, terrible characters, one-dimensional characters, characters with no characters, an overabundance of human characters taking the spotlight away from the Cybertronian characters, and of course, the storyline for this series getting more and more convoluted and messy as time went on. And it's the last bit I want to focus on there, because each new movie added some sort of new backstory and world-building detail that either raised questions about the previously established lore or just contradicted it altogether.
It's been an honor serving with you all. Autobots, roll out!
In the first movie, the world building was pretty simple. There's a device called the Allspark that is capable of creating entire worlds and species, and a war broke out over who would control it, leading to the Allspark being lost in space, eventually arriving on Earth. Megatron then tried to find it himself, but crash landed on Earth around 12,000 years ago, and got frozen in the Arctic. As the Allspark and Megatron were eventually found and relocated in the early 20th century, Autobots and Decepticons began to track them on Earth, leading up to the events of the first movie. Bumblebee apparently arrived ahead of the other Autobots to scout the planet and try and get some leads. The Decepticons followed shortly afterwards, and as seen, the rest of the Autobots arrived shortly after them. Sounds simple enough, some basic ground rules, a slowly building conflict, both sides trying to navigate a new hostile planet, all well and good. I do have a few issues with this film, of course, primarily being, how can Megatron immediately speak English right after being unthawed from the ice? Secondly, why wouldn't the Autobots just use the Allspark to raise an army to stop the Decepticons? The Allspark isn't some terrible power by itself, it's just raw power. So why wouldn't Optimus use this to create his own army and stop the Decepticons? But to be fair, maybe the Allspark is unpredictable. Maybe it's just using the Allspark without some sort of technology makes the Allspark extremely dangerous. Thirdly, if the Allspark has so much power that it can create entire worlds, then why does it basically get destroyed at the end when Megatron absorbs some of its energy? I mean, this is what the Allspark is designed to do, right? Transfer its energy into other things. So I struggle to understand how it gets so drained and basically gets destroyed because it decides to give Megatron some of its energy.
Revenge is mine.
So moving on from a pretty decent start, we then have Revenge of the Fallen, which decided to add a bunch of convoluted world building to try and justify the fetch quest the main characters go on and the main villain being there. So despite the fact that we have the cube that has enough power and energy to be able to create and sustain entire worlds and civilizations, they then decided to go around the universe creating star harvesters, which harvests the energy from the sun by destroying and consuming them. Bit of a fucked up thing to do considering you already had the Allspark, but don't let me be the judge of you. Also, the war now apparently started not when Megatron became power hungry and desired the Allspark, but about 17,000 years ago, when the Fallen tried to harvest the sun that would kill the human race, starting a civil war. And somehow, despite only being 17,000 years ago, and despite the large amount of archaeological digs that have occurred in the area, absolutely no one managed to find these giant robot carcasses strewn across Egypt. They found a bunch of random symbols on a rock which would just be as old, but thousands of dead corpses left to rot in the ground somehow managed to just disappear. We then have the fact that the Fallen is still very much alive and kicking. His character is entirely dog shit. I'm not going to get into it too much because I've already made a video on his character, but essentially everyone hypes him up as some sort of terrifying monster that only a Prime can defeat. And then he basically sits around and does absolutely nothing, and literally anyone could have killed him. He dies by being punched. For someone who's so important in this movie, he's pretty cringe. What else is there? Oh yeah, there's that scene where it's revealed that there's actually been plenty of Cybertronians hiding out on Earth for the past 100-ish years, which begs the question why absolutely none of them bothered to show up in the last movie, and none of them bothered to show up in this movie or the future ones. They're just casually brought up as talking points and then pressed aside. The Decepticons managed to find one of the fragments of the Allspark left, repairing Megatron's body and then using the fragment to bring him back to life. Which begs the question, why didn't any of the Autobots bring Jazz back? All they needed to do was weld his bottom half to his top half and then hit him with the cube juice and he would have been alive. But instead they just yeet him into the bottom of the ocean and never bring him up again in any other film. About a third of the way through the film we discover that Alice, Sam's fellow student at the college he's attending, is actually a Decepticon in disguise. Now this opens up a wide variety of opportunities with the stories moving forward. After all, the ability for Decepticons to play humans against each other by posing as one of them seems like a really cool idea. So naturally, this series decided to never bring these things up again, throwing away any and all potential of having some shape-shifting aliens infiltrate Earth and its defense forces. I mean, overall, Revenge of the Fallen is just a big fucking mess. Made even messier by Dark of the Moon, which somehow managed to make things even more complicated.
I'm Wang. Deep Wang. Deep Wang.
During the war, Sentinel Prime intended to betray the Autobots, and out of all the places in the universe, they were going to meet at Earth so they could use humans as slave labour and mine the Earth for resources. But unfortunately, Sentinel Prime's ship was damaged, causing it to drift through space endlessly until it crash landed next to the planet it was going to try to go to anyways. What a fucking coincidence. So far, we have a race of Cybertronians that decided to randomly go out into the galaxy to destroy suns for energy they didn't need because they already had a source of unlimited energy. They then proceeded to fight over the Sun Harvester, with the Civil War spreading to Cybertron. During this time, Megatron made a deal with Sentinel Prime to betray the Autobots in order to gather a slave labour army and resources to rebuild Cybertron, which seems like a complete waste of time when you could have just gotten the Allspark and used that to fix everything instead of micromanaging another planet for several decades. Then Sentinel went MIA because the Decepticons shot down his ship because Megatron apparently didn't bother to tell anyone about the deal they had or the extremely important technology they needed that was on board. And so Megatron decided to just go after the Allspark, but unfortunately they both got frozen and then eventually the Allspark got destroyed. The Sun Harvester also got destroyed. But it's okay because Sentinel just so happened to crash on the moon nearby and now he can restart that plan that he wouldn't have needed to make because why would he when the Allspark exists? And if that wasn't enough piss in your world building cereal, then it turns out that everything that happened in the first half of this movie, showing the Decepticons losing valuable artifacts and trying to cover up information they've been revealing to human conspirators for decades, was actually part of a ploy to get Unit and the Autobots interested in Sentinel's ship, because it would make Optimus go up and retrieve Sentinel and then revive him with the Matrix of Leadership, the thing that no one in the modern day even thought existed until the last film. But nope, this has been something the Decepticons have been planning for decades, despite this thing only existing for like a year. And on top of this, the Decepticons were apparently just chilling under the moon for about 50 years waiting for the invasion to begin. You're telling me that Megatron had access to hundreds of Decepticons with spaceships and he's only using them now? Why didn't you use them to secure the Allspark? Why didn't you use them to secure the Star Harvester? Were they on paid vacation? Did they get sick leave? Why don't you seem to have control over your own army? So the Decepticons take over Earth and begin to transport Cybertron into Earth's atmosphere. And this is just fine apparently. Not only is Earth not affected in any way possible, but at one point Cybertron gets cut in half and then they begin the process again and it's completely fine. Until of course the teleporters get destroyed and Cybertron gets blended up.
Your car? Huh? Sweetie, hand me my alien gun.
So, Age of Extinction. After the last movie, most of the cities, including Chicago, have been rebuilt. The Decepticons are being hunted worldwide, and the Autobots are being hunted by a rogue CIA faction in order to sell their parts to KSI and make a profit, using the help of Lockdown, an independent Cybertronian, to do so. KSI then uses these raw materials, which they call Transformium, to make their own robots and weapons. Seems a bit strange that, despite being in charge of them for several years now, Unit has randomly disappeared and been replaced by Cemetery Wind, run by a group of people that have no synergy with each other. Why was Cemetery Wind put in command of the Autobots? Where's Morshower, Ep and Lennox? Oh, yeah, that's right, because the film needs to happen, and for that to work the Autobots need to be betrayed, so all these fuckers just get sent to the Shadow Realm apparently. It's also revealed that Cybertronians are made by a bunch of jelly people who bombed the Earth to create Transformium, harvesting it and killing the dinosaurs in the process, which means they weren't created by the Allspark then, and Optimus seems to also know this, as he knows what the seed is and how it works.
They turned your organic life into our elemental metals. Our creators destroyed your world to make us.
So what was up with the Allspark monologue in your first movie if you know that the Allspark didn't actually create you? After Cade activates Optimus and tries to repair him, Optimus says,
We call it a spark, It contains our life force and our memories.
Which opens up so many questions. If the spark has all their personality in it, why didn't they just make Jazz a new body and put his still intact spark into it instead of dropping him into the bottom of the ocean? How was Megatron able to come back from the dead when the Allspark destroyed his spark? How was Megatron able to come back as Galvatron when KSI only had access to Megatron's head, which according to this line has absolutely nothing to do with memory or personality? The answer to all of these questions is
Shut up, bitch!
We're also introduced to the Dinobots, and I have so many questions about them as well. If the Primes, and therefore the Cybertronian race, only discovered Earth around 17,000 years ago, how would they have dinosaur alternate modes when all the fossils would be long buried under the dirt? Unless they were stomping around since Earth was first terraformed 65 million years ago, in which case how did none of the Primes find them when they arrived? Can Cybertronians transform to look like other creatures in general, or are these guys a special case?
Look, old timer, I don't have a ton of patience for riddles right now.
Yes, but you want to know, don't you, dude?
Finally, we move on to The Last Night, the film where the writers just threw everything up in the air and said, fuck it, just put literally anything in the movie. Once again, I've got absolutely no clue on how or when the Cybertronians were made, especially considering the ending of this film. So first we were told that the Allspark created them and Cybertron. Then it turns out a race of aliens known only as the Creators created them 65 million years ago when they terraformed Earth. Then apparently Quintessa is the person that created them, and she doesn't seem to have anything to do with these guys. But all of this is irrelevant anyways, because it turns out that the core of Earth is Unicron, a Cybertronian, meaning he would have had to be created billions of years ago in order for the Earth to form around him, meaning it has nothing to do with the stuff that happened 65 million years ago. Cybertron is back, but I'm not really sure how to explain how it looks the way it looks. It has small little branches of the planet sticking out from it, but it still has a sphere-shaped core to it, despite the fact that the last time we saw it, half the planet was ripped apart by the teleporters. So it's still damaged after Dark of the Moon, but somehow it just isn't shredded up compared to where we saw it last time. It also, despite being a planet, can just travel wherever it wants to now, despite having no means of propulsion, because it just appears in our solar system without any explanation, and it has somehow shrunk, being smaller than Earth now when it was much bigger. Optimus, after magically gaining some rocket boots at the end of the last film and blasting off into space, crash lands on Cybertron, and seems very confused about how Cybertron is a barren and empty wasteland.
My world. What has happened to my world?
Optimus, you were part of a planetary civil war there, a war that drained all of its resources. What do you mean, what happened to my world? You were there when it fell. You explained this to Sentinel in Dark of the Moon.
The war was lost. Cybertron is now but a barren wasteland.
Quintessa plans to drain the life force from Unicron, restoring Cybertron while destroying Earth in the process. To do this, she will need her staff. This staff was taken by 12 knights, who coincidentally fled to Earth. They then went on to fight during the Dark Ages, about 15,000 years ago, and apparently no one knows this except the direct descendants of Merlin and King Arthur. No one on this battlefield decided to draw or write or make songs about the giant metal men that can turn into dragons. No one actually knows how many knights there are, by the way, either. Throughout the movie they say there is 12 knights, and 4 of them end up dying throughout the film. But at the end of the film there's still about 11 or 12 left, so not even the movie knows how many there are. The human antagonists in this movie are the TRF, who are once again hunting all the Transformers, except not really. We see in Chicago, which once again has become a decrepit wasteland despite being rebuilt in the last movie, that they are now willing to destroy these Autobots and the Knight, even if they aren't fighting or resisting on sight. Many of these soldiers are also ex-unit members, who still decide to go through with attacking Bumblebee. Yet, for some reason they are willing to take Decepticons, who actively go out their way to kill and destroy things, and keep them prisoners. They willingly negotiate with Space Hitler, and even release some of the Decepticons, but they will mercilessly blow up some big friendly giant chilling under some concrete. It's just complete bullshit. Speaking of complete bullshit, Megatron and Bumblebee have been hit by this as well. Megatron, despite being made of transformium, is now as rigid and mechanical as any other Cybertronian, not being able to use his shape-shifting abilities anymore. No idea how or why he would just give up this advantage, considering it allows himself to be blown apart and put back together, which is exactly my issue with Bumblebee. For some reason, Bumblebee himself cannot die anymore. Doesn't matter if you blow him up or rip him apart, he will just merge himself back together and be completely fine. They made the really annoying Kid Appeal character immortal, giving you even less reasons to care about him because there's literally no stakes with him. He's the only one who gets to do this. No one else gets this ability. There's also this scene.
Your voice. I have not heard it since Cybertron fell.
Now, at the end of the first film, Bumblebee manages to talk, and Optimus very clearly has a conversation with him. So why Optimus is now deciding he hasn't talked to Bumblebee for centuries when he literally heard his voice 10 years ago is a bit weird. You remember in the first film, where it seemed like Cybertronians had only recently arrived on Earth to try and scout for the Allspark? Well, now apparently Bumblebee was fighting in World War II. Very publicly fighting during World War II, which makes me question how no one knew about him considering how public he and Hot Rod were as figures to the Allies. Also, yeah, Hot Rod has been on Earth with a few other friends this entire time, and never once bothered to try and get in contact and help the Autobots during any of these disasters. In fact, the entire first film seems to have been retconned, as there's memorabilia showing Optimus and Ironhide fighting at various points throughout history, with there even being paintings depicting this. Yet somehow no government in the world except for Sector 7 knew about this apparently. Overall, the backstory and world building to these movies are an absolute clusterfuck. It seems to be that every single film just needed to add even more bullshit into the backstory to try and justify the events of the current film and give us some sort of spectacle, creating a giant mess of a timeline that just got even more and more convoluted with each appearance. Thanks for watching, lads and lasses. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. Sharing always helps, and if you're feeling really generous, please consider my Patreon or YouTube membership. I also have a Twitter and occasionally I do live streams. But most of all, I just hope you had a great day and hopefully I will see you in the next video.